It all started after Pearl Harbor. The smoke hadn't even cleared from that wreckage before the Japanese moved in, island after island, like a tide that just wouldn't stop. They were aggressive, prepared, and completely fearless. And us? We were reeling, bruised, angry, and trying to catch up. But once we joined the war for real, once the U.S. got serious, we knew our mission: take every island back, no matter the cost. They called it Task Force 58. You had to see it to believe it. Ship after ship, stretched so far across the horizon you couldn't even see where it ended. That was our firepower, our answer to the Empire of Japan. We'd head out from Pearl Harbor, and then it was on. One island after another, shelling them hard before anyone even stepped foot on the beaches. I was one of the closest to the shore, on a destroyer. We had our 5-inch guns, tiny compared to the big boys. We were the first to fire, softening them up. Then came the cruisers with their 8-inchers, and behind them, the battleships. Oh man, the 16-inch guns. That thunder would shake your bones. The whole ocean felt like it was rumbling when those monsters opened up. And right in the center, always, were the aircraft carriers. The Japanese hated those things. They were always trying to take them out. Every time we launched an operation, you could count on it. They'd send out swarms of planes, trying to break through to the carriers. That's when it got wild. We were firing like mad at the sky, trying to knock those birds out before they got too close. I don't even remember how many we shot down. Hundreds, maybe more. It was chaos, and it never stopped. The Gilbert Islands, though, that one stuck with me. We lost about 1,600 Marines there before they even touched the ground. Can you believe that? Men dying in the water, in the landing craft, before their boots hit the sand. The Japanese weren't giving up. They were buried in the ground, waiting. And when we finally stormed the island, it was a bloodbath. The beaches were littered with bodies. Young guys, so young, lying face down in the surf. And even when we shelled those islands to hell, flattened them so not a single tree stood, the enemy still came out, still fought. Fanatics, that's what they were. You shoot one down and 3 more come running at you, screaming, bayonets out. It was insane. You had to be just as brutal, or you didn't make it back. I remember asking myself, how can someone think like that? How can anyone be so ready to die? But that was them. And if you didn't shoot, they'd kill you. It was that simple. It was survival. The Japanese had serious firepower, too. They had these battleships with 18-inch guns. 18 inches. You don't mess with that. There came a point where they wanted a fleet-on-fleet battle. We thought we were going to clash head-on, maybe the biggest naval fight of the whole war. We moved out to meet them, ready to throw down. And then they turned around. Just like that. Changed their minds and ran. So we sent our planes after them. Wave after wave. Those pilots, God bless them, most didn't make it back. They ran out of fuel over open water. Some landed in the sea, hoping someone would find them in the dark. We turned on our big searchlights, 36 inches across, and tried to guide them home. A few made it, just barely, sliding into the water near us. But a lot never came back. That part I don't forget. Planes crashing into the waves, lights scanning the darkness. Nothing but silence. Those boys gave everything. Sometimes I think about those pilots, the ones who never made it back. I still see their faces sometimes. Kids, most of them. Brave, reckless, maybe. But they believed in something. We all did. Out there, you had to. Otherwise, the fear would chew you alive. But even more than our own losses, what stuck with me was how the Japanese acted. You'd shoot down one of their planes, and the pilot would land in the water. We'd send a boat to pick him up, offer to pull him out, give him medical care, maybe even save his life. And he wouldn't come. Wouldn't even look at us. He'd drift there, in that black ocean, and choose to die instead of be rescued by the enemy. That was their mindset. Death before dishonor. We were the devils in their eyes, monsters from another world. And the longer the war dragged on, the more it seemed like their hatred grew. Their courage did too, if you want to call it that. Then came the kamikazes. I wasn't on the ships that got hit worst, but I heard the stories. I saw the wrecks. Planes screaming out of the sky, not trying to drop bombs or fire weapons, just diving straight into the decks, exploding on impact, killing themselves just to take one ship down. That kind of suicide mission. It shook us all. You never knew when one was coming. You'd be sitting there on watch, scanning the horizon, and suddenly a plane would come barreling toward you like a bullet. No dodging it. No surviving it, sometimes. That was the war out there. A kind of madness. I spent 2 years in the Pacific, fighting, floating, firing, surviving. Sometimes we'd pull into harbor, catch our breath for a minute. But even then, the war never really stopped. You were always waiting for the next order, the next beach, the next loss. Eventually, they sent me home. 2 months leave in the States. It was surreal. Clean streets, calm skies, people laughing like the world hadn't gone to hell. It felt fake, almost, like I was watching a movie, not really living in it. Then, just as quick, they shipped me back. This time to Chicago. They had me training on an attack troop transport, getting ready for the invasion of Japan. That was the plan. Full-on assault on the mainland. We all knew what that meant. Slaughter. We'd seen what it took just to take one island. Now multiply that by 1,000. We knew they'd never surrender. The Japanese had already shown us they'd rather die than quit. And they had home field advantage. If we went in, it would be blood in the streets. Millions dead. Maybe half of us wouldn't come back. I remember the quiet fear in everyone's eyes. No one said it out loud, but we knew. This was going to be the last fight for a lot of us. There was no glory in it anymore, just survival. But then something happened. Something no one saw coming. We dropped the bomb. I didn't know what an atomic bomb was, not really. None of us did. Just that it was big and dangerous and final. First Hiroshima, then Nagasaki. We didn't see it, of course, but we heard about it. And then, silence. The war machine stopped. The Japanese surrendered. Just like that. Part of me felt relieved. Another part didn't know how to feel. Was it worth it? Did it have to end that way? I still don't know. But I do know this. If we had invaded, most of us wouldn't be here now. When they signed the surrender, I was there, near Tokyo Bay. Not on the Missouri, but nearby, unloading Marines, just in case. Because even then, even after everything, we weren't sure it was really over. And when it was, I was done. They offered me Chief Petty Officer, highest rank I could get. I said no, I'd had enough. I went home. That's the truth of it. Going home should have felt like a victory, like something worth celebrating. But it didn't. Not really. It felt heavy. Like I'd left a part of myself out there in the Pacific, scattered somewhere between the Gilbert Islands and the dark water where those pilots vanished. I stepped off that transport and saw American streets again. Cars, kids playing, shop windows lit up. But I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. People clapped. They called us heroes. But they didn't know. How could they? They didn't see what we saw. They didn't smell the burning oil, or hear the screams in the surf, or watch a 19-year-old bleed out on the sand, calling for his mother. They didn't feel the ship shake from a kamikaze strike 2 decks over. They didn't see a man jump overboard just to escape the fire. I wasn't angry at them, just distant. You can't explain war to someone who's never been inside it. Not really. So you smile, nod, say thank you. Then you try to sleep with a radio playing static in your head and ghosts knocking around your memory. For 2 months, I tried to act normal. Saw some old friends. Drank a little too much. Woke up sweating most nights. Sometimes I'd hear fireworks and hit the ground before I realized it wasn't a shell. My folks tried their best. My mother cooked for me like I hadn't eaten in years. My dad never talked about it, just gave me a pat on the back and said I'd made him proud. Then the orders came again. Back to Chicago, back to the uniform. They had me working troop transfers, gearing up for something bigger, something final. It was supposed to be the biggest assault of the entire war. Boots on the ground in Japan. An invasion no one really wanted, but everyone knew was coming. We trained hard, mapped beaches, practiced landings, ran drills in freezing water with gear so heavy it felt like drowning. And all the while, in the back of every man's mind, was this one question: how many of us will come back? We'd seen what they did on Iwo Jima, on Saipan, on Okinawa. 9 out of 10 Japanese soldiers fought to the death. No surrender, no mercy. If we went into Japan proper, their own mainland, what would happen then? Every village would be a battlefield. Every woman or child could have a blade or a bomb. That's what we expected. And if we'd gone in, I'm telling you now, it would have been the biggest bloodbath in human history, ours and theirs. But then, just like that, the world changed. They dropped the bomb. At first, it was just whispers. A new kind of weapon. One bomb destroyed an entire city, Hiroshima. A few days later, another, Nagasaki. I didn't believe it until the surrender came. I didn't want to believe it. But it was real. The Japanese had finally given up. Some men cheered. Others stood still, like they didn't know what to do with their hands anymore. For me, it felt like letting out a breath I'd been holding for 2 years. Not relief, just release. Like a storm that finally stopped, leaving everything broken behind it. They flew us out near Tokyo Bay to unload Marines, to hold positions just in case. It was the first time we'd stood on Japanese soil without being shot at. But still, we were on edge. Anything could have happened. Fanatics don't always follow orders. I remember watching from the deck as the brass signed the documents on the USS Missouri. The official end of the war. It was quiet. Not a celebration. Just solemn. Like everyone understood the cost, and I think that's when I knew I was finished. They offered me rank, Chief Petty Officer, a bigger hat, more stripes. I turned it down. I'd done my part. I didn't need more medals or more battles. I wanted to go home, not just to my house, to my life, whatever was left of it. But even now, all these years later, the war never really left me. The strange thing about coming home for good is how fast everything moves while you've been gone, and how slow it feels inside your own head. The war was over, officially. People filled the streets. There were parades, flags everywhere, bands playing in town squares, kids waving and yelling, "Thank you," like it was all a movie and we were the stars. But I didn't feel like any kind of hero. I felt tired. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. It wasn't my body. It was something deeper. Like the war had soaked into my bones. They told us we could have anything: jobs, homes, loans, medals. But what I really wanted was peace in my head, and that never came easy. Some of the other guys I served with, they couldn't sit in a crowded room anymore. Couldn't sleep without a bottle. One of them, Jimmy from Iowa, he survived 3 island landings. Came home and barely spoke to his wife for months. Another guy I knew, Steve, jumped every time a car backfired. He kept his mattress on the floor and slept in his boots. Me? I had dreams, not the kind you want. They came often and loud. I'd be back on the deck, watching a burning plane dive toward the water, or hearing the whistling of shells just before they hit. Sometimes I'd dream I was back on the Gilbert Islands, stepping off the boat, looking around, knowing what was waiting just past the tree line. Other times, I'd dream of the boys we lost, their faces, their last words. Some didn't get any, just a sound, a gasp, and then gone. Those stayed with you, whether you wanted them to or not. I tried to work. Got a job loading cargo off the rails. It kept my hands busy, but my mind was still stuck at sea. Some days, I'd just stop moving and stare at nothing for a full minute before snapping back. People noticed. They called it battle fatigue back then. Now they've got a fancier word for it: PTSD. Whatever they call it, it's the same. Your body comes home, but part of you never leaves the war. I remember once walking down the Yoo-Hoo street when I heard the roar of an engine overhead, just a crop duster flying too low, and I dropped flat onto the sidewalk, arms over my head, like I was back on deck, under attack. People stared, a kid laughed. I just stood up, dusted off, and kept walking like nothing happened. That's how it was. Most folks didn't want to talk about the war anyway. Not really. They wanted the happy stories, the victory, the flags, the photographs of the surrender, but not the blood, not the beach covered in dead men, not the smell of burning flesh or the sound of a man screaming while holding his own guts in. Those parts were inconvenient, easier to forget. But I didn't forget. I couldn't. Sometimes I'd sit alone on the porch, smoking, just staring at the horizon, thinking about the men who didn't make it home, men who had sweethearts waiting, moms, brothers, little sisters who'd never understand why the letters stopped coming. Sometimes I'd think about the Japanese soldiers, too, even the fanatics, the ones who fought to the last breath, not because they were evil, but because that's all they'd been taught. To them, we were monsters, just like we saw them. And maybe that's the saddest part. 2 sides, both thinking they were right, both willing to die for it. Yeah, we won. But it didn't feel like a win. Not really. It felt like survival, like crawling out of a fire you didn't start and hoping no one remembers how much you screamed. That's war, no glory, just cost. Some nights I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. It was the kind of silence that most people would find peaceful. But to me it felt loud, deafening even. After 2 years in the Pacific, where the ocean was never quiet, and the sky always seemed to hold a hum of engines or distant gunfire, silence didn't feel like rest. It felt like waiting, like something bad was about to happen again. I didn't talk much about the war. Not to family, not to friends. What was I supposed to say? That I watched men get torn apart by shrapnel and couldn't do a thing to help? That I saw a ship vanish in smoke after taking a kamikaze hit, and we didn't even have time to count the dead? That I watched a boy, couldn't have been more than 18, crying for his mother with half his chest missing? No one wanted to hear that. And even if they did, I didn't want to say it. So I kept it in. It came out in other ways. I'd flinch if someone slammed a door too hard. I'd grip the edge of the table when fireworks went off on the 4th of July. I couldn't walk into a crowded store without feeling my heart race. I'd scan exits, watch faces, make sure no one was reaching for something out of place. I was home, yeah. But part of me never left those islands. My wife, bless her, she tried to understand. She was patient. But there were nights I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat. She'd hold me, ask what I saw. I couldn't always answer. Sometimes it wasn't even one specific thing, just a feeling that I was back in it, that the shelling hadn't stopped, that I was still fighting for air, for life. And the worst part? Guilt. Not just survivor's guilt. That came too, sure, but it was more than that. I felt guilty for quitting, for leaving, for coming home when so many others didn't. I turned down that promotion, said no to being chief petty officer. Most people would think that was a clean break, but it wasn't. Not really. I left the uniform behind, but the war didn't leave me. I'd walk down streets lined with American flags and think of the tiny island beaches where the sand was soaked in blood. I'd see kids playing army in the yard, yelling, "Bang, bang," and I'd have to bite my tongue to keep from telling them what bullets really do, what war really is, because no one tells you what happens after the fight. No one tells you that even when you win, the memories still haunt you. You start asking questions, questions you can't answer. Could I have done more? Could I have saved that man? Was it right, what we did? Were we justified? Did those bombs really need to fall? Could there have been another way? The hardest thing to accept is that you'll never know. You just carry it, like weight in your chest that never quite goes away. I remember once, a boy, must have been in school, came up to me and asked if I killed anyone in the war. Just like that. No hesitation. No idea what he was really asking. I looked at him and said, "I did what I had to do so that you wouldn't have to." And that's the truth. That's the only answer I've got. I started visiting the VA every once in a while. Veterans like me, just sitting in metal chairs, nursing lukewarm coffee, trying to make sense of a war we never really left. Some of the guys talked a lot. Others, like me, just listened. There was a Marine who had lost part of his leg in the Philippines. He said the worst pain wasn't the wound. It was waking up in the hospital and realizing his whole squad was gone. One guy from the Navy used to tap his fingers constantly, like he was still sending Morse code. And there was an old bomber pilot who barely spoke, just stared at the floor like he was trying to find something he'd dropped in 1944. We weren't the same men we were before the war. Some of us had dreams that never came back. Others had families they didn't know how to talk to anymore. But in those quiet rooms, we understood each other. Not with words, always. Sometimes just a nod, a glance. That was enough. There was a bond there, stronger than blood. We had seen what humanity could do when pushed to its darkest edges, and somehow we had survived. That made us brothers, even if we didn't say it. I started helping with some of the newer vets who came in from Korea, and later, Vietnam. You could see it in their eyes. The same 1,000-yard stare, the same weight, the same questions. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew how to listen. That mattered more than I thought it would. Still, there were days when the memories would come creeping back. Not always the worst ones either. Sometimes it was the faces, the laughter, the letters read aloud on the deck. The kid from Brooklyn who could sing like Sinatra. The Texan who always carried a photo of his dog in his helmet. Small things, lost things. Sometimes I'd walk past a graveyard and wonder how many names I'd recognize if I looked long enough. I didn't go to too many funerals. I couldn't. But I always kept a list, in a little notebook in my drawer. First names, last names, ship names. Places where they died. Some people collect baseball cards. I kept memories. I'd think about the ones who didn't get a chance to live a full life. Guys who never made it past 20. Who never kissed their sweethearts again. Never saw their kids. Never got to sit on a porch in peace like I was doing. Sometimes I'd think, why me? And other times I'd remind myself I was lucky. Not special, just lucky. That was all, but luck doesn't protect you from forgetting. And that's what scared me most. That one day, all of it would fade. That kids would read about the war in a textbook and not feel it. That the beaches would turn into vacation resorts. That the names would blur and the faces would vanish. So I started writing things down. Not for glory, not for history books, just so someone, someday, might understand what it cost, because everything costs. Freedom, peace, victory. All of it comes with a price. You don't just win a war. You carry it. Every step after is just learning how to walk with the weight. Time moved fast after the war, even when the nights dragged on. I got older, slower. But the memories stayed sharp, like they were carved into my bones. I watched the world change from a quiet front porch, the same one I used to sit on with my dad before the war. Now it was mine, though it felt lonelier. I saw new wars come and go on the television. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, Iraq. Different names, different places, but the same damn loss. Young men being sent to fight, to die. And when they came home, they looked like I did once. Lost. Older than their years. Worn out in ways no one back home could understand. And still, the world kept forgetting. Every time the country had a stretch of peace, a couple decades without a draft, without body bags on the news, people got soft, comfortable, complacent. The same folks who clapped for us in parades started saying war was just history, something far away, something we'd grown past. That's what I couldn't understand. How fast people forgot what it took to get here. I'd hear young folks talk like freedom was free, like they were owed it, like it was just part of life. But I knew better. I'd seen the cost, not just in blood, but in years. In the minds of men who never slept soundly again. In the widows, the orphans, the friends who never wrote back. One day, a teenager at a grocery store noticed the old Navy tattoo on my forearm. He asked, "Were you in the war?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Cool," and walked away like I told him I'd played on a football team once. Cool. I sat in my truck afterward, just staring out the windshield. Not mad, not sad, just tired. That was the moment I realized we were being forgotten, all of us. The men who bled in the jungle, in the snow, in the ocean, the ones who never got to grow old. It was all fading. We were just pictures in an old yearbook to them now. I went to a high school once, talked to some kids about the Pacific. They were polite. Some asked good questions. But when I told them about the beaches, about the dead stacked on each other before we even made it off the boats, you could see it in their faces. They didn't really believe it. Not deep down. It was too ugly. Too real. That's the problem. We cleaned up history so well, people forgot what it really was. They don't see the terror, the mess, the weight of it. They just see the victory. But victory ain't clean. It never is. There was a time I couldn't get through a story without choking up. Now I just tell them plain. The young ones think I'm cold. But I'm not. I'm just tired of sugarcoating what we lived through. I kept that old notebook on my nightstand, the one with the names. Every year, on the day we lost the Gilbert Islands, I'd open it, say their names out loud, quietly, just for me. I didn't care if no one else remembered. I did. That was my duty now, to remember what they gave, because someday, none of us will be left. And when that happens, who will tell the truth? Now I'm an old man. The uniform doesn't fit anymore. Not that I wear it. My medals are in a box somewhere, probably gathering dust. Nobody asks much about them these days. The world's too busy, too distracted. There's always another crisis, another headline, another excuse not to look back. But I still remember. Every morning I wake up, and the first thing I do is listen. Not for the ocean, not for gunfire, just for quiet. And when I hear it, real quiet, I thank the boys who didn't make it home. Because that silence, they paid for it. Every second of peace we've had since 1945 was bought with their blood. People think history is just dates and facts. But it's not. History is pain. It's choices. It's the look in a young man's eyes when he realizes he's not going home. It's a battlefield that used to be a paradise. It's two nations killing each other because neither one could imagine surrender. I think sometimes about the Japanese soldiers, too. The fanatics, we called them. They weren't born to die. No one is. But their world taught them that death for the emperor was holy, just like ours taught us to fight for liberty. Two beliefs, two deaths, same result. That's the sickness of war. It takes good boys and turns them into ghosts. On both sides, we won, yeah. But don't let anyone tell you we walked away proud and clean. We walked away haunted, lucky to be breathing. And when they dropped those bombs, I know what people say, it had to be done. It saved lives. Maybe it did. But God help us for what it cost. I didn't go to Hiroshima or Nagasaki, but I saw the photos. I saw what hell looks like when men create it with science instead of swords. And yet, after all that, I got to live. I got to sit in this chair, watch the seasons change, hear the laughter of children outside. I got to see what peace looks like, even if it came at a price too high to count. But what about the next war? Because there'll be one. There always is. And I wonder, will they be ready? Will they even understand what it means? Or will they forget? Sometimes I look around and I think, we already are. That's what scares me. Not dying. I've made peace with that. What scares me is that we've gone soft, that we've had it too good for too long, that we forgot the graveyards we built and the promises we made over them. I remember the faces, the voices, the songs sung below deck, the silence after the shelling stopped. I remember everything. And when I'm gone, maybe that memory goes with me. But I hope not. Because this world wasn't handed to us. It was earned, inch by bloody inch. And if we forget that, if we forget them, then we don't deserve any of it. So yeah, I'm just one of the lucky ones. Still here, still talking to you, but not forever. And when I'm gone, you better remember. Not for me, for them.